With Wano Kuni approaching, I believe it's time that we cover the Wano Kuni swordsmen and how their powers work. Now, there's a lot of mystery built around the Wano Kuni swordsmen and just swordsmen in general in One Piece because many of the sword techniques have not really been properly explained yet, and I feel like in the future in Wano Kuni we may get a better example or explanation on how these sword techniques work. And if you don't know what I'm talking about here, I will explain later in the video. If you've seen my video on Zoro before, you may have a little bit of an idea of what I'm talking about here, but I will go a little bit more in depth into the different sword abilities as well. We've already seen a bunch of different swordsmen that can use elemental abilities, and they seem to be able to do this by channeling energy through their swords. Now, it seems kind of complicated at first, although it could be explained through scientific means such as dials, or just some kind of technology that is involved with their swords. So a big example we've seen in the New World is Kinemon, who can use Foxfire style, and he is able to generate fire, he's able to cut fire. It seems to be a general style that he can use, and we're not really sure if it's limited to his sword directly. We do know that some swords have special powers in One Piece. For example, the cursed swords can generate auras, or they can control the user into killing other people. And it definitely does go to show that maybe Kinemon's sword can actually generate fire itself, and that it's not the power of Kinemon. But there is sort of a contradiction here that I want to bring up. Surprisingly, Zoro has used a fire style before with his swords, and it's not something that many people bring up, to be honest. He has already used a fire style, and this was done against Ryuma when he was fighting and clashing with him. He was actually able to ignite Ryuma, his wound, and then Ryuma himself to basically disintegrate Ryuma. And this is something that has nothing to do with his swords directly, because we have never seen his swords generate fire before. So this is something entirely new, and it has not really been explained yet. Now, I'm sure some of you watching this may be saying to yourself, wait a second, he has used a fire style before. That was the burning demon slash that he used against Mr. 5. And that is true, although he was using the fire around him to sort of absorb and place into his swords and then use it as an attack. Now, it is pretty impressive that he didn't get burned by the fire and that he was able to actually keep the fire on his swords and then use it as an attack. It's pretty strange. So the fact that he's been able to use fire as an attack twice in a row, it does go to show that this could be some kind of fire style that he's developed over time. Now, alongside these fire techniques, we've seen that Zoro is able to use a variety of different wind techniques already. He has generated tornadoes, he has generated wind slashes, so it's pretty clear that he can use a variety of different elemental attacks. Now, alongside elemental abilities, Zoro is capable of generating demon auras or using demon slaying techniques that have a physical effect on the environment. Now, it's kind of unclear whether or not these are his techniques alone, because we do know that he has a cursed sword, and this could be somewhat of a source for these abilities. However, there are some signs that say that this could in fact be part of his spirit as well. On two separate occasions in the fight with Kaku, Zoro was pointed out to have been using these sword techniques using his spirit. Now, during the fight, Kaku described being able to feel Zoro's spirit and described it as a very beast-like spirit. And later on in the fight, when Zoro actually manifested his ultimate trump card, Ashura, Kaku described this as a manifestation of Zoro's spirit through a demon god. So as much as I want to say this is directly linked to his cursed sword, the fact that this was stated on two separate occasions is a good sign that maybe his Ashura and his other demon auras are actually manifestations of his spirit using a sort of demonic sword style. And another example of this is Shiryu of the Rain, who was able to generate this sort of cursed slice using a cursed sword style, I imagine. And this seems to be an actual style that people can use. Now, obviously the cursed sword itself has a huge role in being able to generate these demon auras, but the point is that there is a huge role of the user's spirit itself in using these different sword styles. Now, obviously Brook is able to generate ice using his soul and the powers of the underworld as well in order to create his own ice style that could match Kinemon's fire style. And obviously a lot of the powers of Brook come from his devil fruit because he was able to disconnect his soul from his body in order to use the powers of the underworld apparently. But if people like Zoro who have very strong spirits are prevalent throughout Wano, could there be a variety of different elemental sword users or just a variety of different sword styles in general? And obviously Kinemon, who is directly from Wano, is able to use his Foxfire style. And we have seen some people from Whitebeard's alliance who are able to use a variety of different sword styles. Vista is able to generate flower petals. We see Fasa and McGuy who are able to use fire and electricity on their swords. Although these guys seem like they have an actual maybe dial inside their swords, it's hard to say if this is an actual style. And these two don't seem to be from Wano, so it's possible that they're just mimicking the Wano sword styles, which we see with Kinemon. He is able to use fire more freely, whereas Fasa is only able to generate it on his sword alone. Obviously, Wano Kuni is on a whole different level, and Wano Kuni swordsmen are considered dangerous even by the Navy. Even the Navy doesn't want to ever invade Wano because the swordsmen are just so dangerous. And obviously, if they were able to generate elements at will, you would have guys like Kinemon and Zoro who are able to use these different auras and techniques that would completely demolish any normal swordsman. And something that many other theorists have brought up is that many of these swordsmen from Wano have a title before their name. We have Shiryu of the Rain, we have Foxfire Kinemon, so this could have a lot to do with their specific element. We see that Kinemon is obviously able to generate a fire, so maybe Shiryu could generate water or something of the sort. Now, this would obviously mean that a lot of the Wano Kuni swordsmen would be from different clans that could generate maybe different elements. You could have a lightning style, you could have a wind style, and this would all be from their spirits and their fighting spirit. And Zoro is going to Wano right now, and he obviously has a variety of different elemental abilities. He has wind, fire so far. He can use the cursed style, the demon slaying style. So it would make sense if he learns a bunch of new styles. Now, a lot of people have suggested that he will get some new swords as well. That would make sense, obviously. So I imagine that maybe in the Wano Kuni arc, we will see Zoro develop a bunch of different elemental attacks. And I don't want to leave out Law and Brook because we know that Law has a cursed sword. So maybe in the future we could see him use some demon auras. And we may also see Brook developing his ice style even further. And in this sense, I see Wano Kuni being a great development arc for the different Straw Hats. The swordsmen in the Straw Hats will obviously grow a lot. We will maybe see Luffy finally awaken, like I mentioned in my last theory. And this will ultimately be what helps them a lot against Kaido. We've also seen in the past that Zoro loves to manifest these different gods, and specifically Eastern gods he has a huge thing for. And since Wano Kuni is based on Japan, he could develop some gods from Japan itself, or we may see people in Wano Kuni, like the top swordsmen, who are able to use a variety of different demon auras or god auras perhaps. And there are many Japanese gods who use elemental abilities as well. So maybe the ultimate trump cards of some of these different clans or members of Wano could be the actual god that represents their element. So if Zoro is capable of generating the god Ashura through his spirit, maybe some other swordsmen like Kinemon is able to generate spirits as well using his spirit to manifest it. Kinemon is actually able to generate a fire known as Kitsune-bi, which is a type of fire used by the Kitsune in Japanese folklore. So it's very possible that his style is actually oriented around this mythical being or spirit, and perhaps many of the top ranks within Wano are actually based on different Shinto deities. And once more, Zoro was capable of generating several different demon god auras, so it's very possible that the Wano Kuni swordsmen could generate actual Shinto gods, since they are once again based on Japan, and they could generate these different auras, which would make them a lot stronger. And this would definitely mean that Zoro would have to step up, because before, when he would use the demon auras, nobody would know what it was. But Wano Kuni is a very closed off and very strong nation, so I imagine stuff like this is common for them. Demon auras, elemental sword styles are the pretty much norm around there. And while Zoro is there, he could definitely pick up some new abilities and styles from them. Just seeing all of these styles within the series is a huge sign that Wano Kuni, a major arc, will probably contain all of these different things. So it's definitely foreshadowed and very likely to some degree, although it might be a little bit far-fetched for some of these points. But these are just my early predictions and thoughts on what we might see in Wano. So if you agree or disagree, go ahead and put that in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe if you have not already. But other than that, I will see you all next time.